Hi, I'm Marty Cohn, and welcome to episode 16 of PR Benefits, a show that explores the role of public relations in the COVID-19 era. I've been a PR practitioner for over 45 years, helping a wide array of organizations successfully communicate their messages to targeted audiences. I mistakenly thought that 9/11 would be the watershed event in my lifetime. Communicating in the aftermath of that tragic event was challenging. Then came the global economic downturn in 2008 with more lessons in crisis communications. However, 12 years later, we have the coronavirus pandemic, and new challenges in uncharted waters have emerged. My guest today is John Deveny, president of the full-service marketing and public relations company, Deveny, with offices in New Orleans, Louisiana, and West Palm Beach, Florida. John attended Loyola University, New Orleans, first graduating in 1988, later returning for a master's degree in mass communication. In November 1996, John left his position at a growing public relations agency to forge a new path, his own. In opening Deveny, John created a new approach to professional communication, specializing in the areas of crisis, healthcare, tourism, and hospitality. John has led on-site communications during the aftermath of current Hurricanes Katrina and Rita, managing more than $400 million in media scrutiny in warlike conditions. He also led Louisiana's Department of Culture, Recreation, and Tourism through the BP oil spill nightmare, reshaping public perception and preserving the state's $9.4 billion tourism industry. He has received many awards and is the only professional to ever merit the Lifetime Achievement recognition of PR News's Hall of Fame, PRSA College of Fellows, and IABC Fellows. Welcome, John.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So, John, you got your master's degree, and then you left your position to form a growing public relations agency. But how did you get started in public relations?
Well, it started with me moving from South Florida to New Orleans when I was 17. And I went there to go to school at Loyola University, as you mentioned. And I was going to college because that was a requirement for law school. I thought that was the path that I was on. I wanted to be an attorney because I wanted to advocate for people. I wanted to right wrongs that were out there. I wanted to bring opposing sides together. I wanted to really create solutions. And it was in an intro to communication class at Loyola that the scales were dropped from my eyes, and I saw that that's what PR people do, and that's what I've been doing ever since.
Fantastic. Well, we welcome that epiphany. You're a credit to public relations. So, John, I kind of break things down time frame wise. So I want you to go back in time to pre-COVID-19. So it's like 5 months ago. What were some of the highlights of your pre-COVID-19 career?
So our agency has four primary practice areas. You mentioned crisis. And so in the crisis area, we worked on September 11th. Specifically, we worked on that for the recovery from tourism. So, all flights were stopped, and we did the campaign and worked with the New Orleans Convention and Visitors Bureau to restart tourism and bring visitors back to New Orleans. And New Orleans was one of the top 3 domestic destinations. They included New Orleans, Las Vegas, and Orlando that recovered best, more fully, and quickest from that. So crisis, we also do travel and tourism. I've worked for the state of Louisiana and the state of Kentucky and the state of New Mexico, bringing visitors to those great states. In healthcare, I think the piece that stands out in my mind is the work that we did with March of Dimes, specifically on their folic acid campaign. The goal of the folic acid, it was one of the it was one of the biggest campaigns that March Times had done, and it was to communicate the important message that women in the period of life where they could conceive should have ingest folic acid every day. And it's like a magic bullet. And it was such a great campaign to work on, because what March of Dimes did was they gave us the worst performing markets in the country, the states that were at the worst. And tragically, by their counting, worst means the highest rates of birth defects or troubled or difficult or unsuccessful births. So we worked on that, got the message out, and we also worked with the Gallup organization to track the work. And it was wonderful because we could see the results of our efforts, and the results were healthy babies being born. And I just can't imagine a more rewarding or fulfilling thing. And every time we would lift the bottom 3 markets, we'd take the next 3. And it was really a wonderful campaign. And far sweeping, because the markets were very challenging. There were very, very hard to reach rural areas at times, and then urban markets as well. So it was a different challenge.
Right. Oh, that's a fantastic. Yeah.
Our 4th practice area is higher education, and so we've had great fortune and great success working with higher ed institutions. And I know you're going to ask about COVID next, and boy, that's a market area that's being effective.
Okay, well, all right. You're anticipating my next question, and that is COVID. So what are you doing for your clients during COVID?
And also, it's amazing, because if you look at the 4 practice areas we work in: crisis, healthcare, higher education, and travel, tourism, food and beverage, hospitality.
You're in it.
Yeah, I mean, hitting a bullseye every year. Looking at, so what are we doing? The first thing we're doing, and we continue to do, is try and be as smart as we possibly can for our clients, and to share good information as soon as it's available. So we've been doing commissioning a lot of research and pouring through a lot of research, and some of what we see are the things that we're seeing played out in the headlines today that we reported to our clients several months ago. You know, with 95% of the travel and tourism market being off. That's so difficult. The loss of 50 million jobs domestically and internationally. It's an international, and that category of the economy was really the underpinning, the engine that kept so many other areas of the economy moving forward. Healthcare is really under siege, and how can we care for COVID patients and make sure that we're also protecting vulnerable segments of society, people that are dear to all of us, and make sure that this virus, that we flatten that curve as much as possible. And higher education and education as a whole, it has been disrupted like never before. And there's a lot of learning that's going on. You know, we're trying to anticipate the changes and things that are happening, but that seems to prove nearly impossible. There's been a couple things that the research helped us anticipate right, and our clients landed in the bullseye, and that was really helpful for what needed to happen for those institutions and the people they serve. But it's challenging. But what do we do? We're trying to get smart. We're doing a lot of research, and that's translating into a wide variety of strategic and tactical work that we're doing in all 4 categories.
And how are you communicating this? Are you meeting more frequently with your clients? How are you giving them this information?
Marty, that's a great question. And also that translates to how are our clients communicating with the people that are important to them. Both systems are so very different. We're seeing, you know, whether you're reading the financial section of the paper or the headlines, or we're seeing this new reality really foment and take shape and see things. We're seeing that, you know, those companies that stream information are just off the charts. And it's impressive to see how people are pivoting as business leaders, as institutions. So how we're communicating with clients, we're finding that one thing that's been really helpful is that we try and process and synthesize the data and the recommendations and give it to them as plainly and clearly as possible, with an easy access to all the data information that we've had. You know, we saw that in several instances. We're meeting like the rest of the world. We're doing a lot more Zoom meetings, as you and I are enjoying right now, and the different go-to meetings and the different options with that. I'm also president of the Palm Beach chapter of the Public Relations Society of America, and we've had to convert all of our programs to virtual. And a program that's coming up in September, Del Galloway is reprising one of the best attended sessions from PRSA's international conference last year, The Path to Be a Trusted Advisor. And what a great time for it. You know, and
Really?
how much has changed in the 12 months, because now the PRSA's international conference is virtual this year. And, you know, your question, how are we communicating with our clients? It really is, how do we maintain, or how do we gain that position as a trusted advisor with all this reality shifting like sands beneath our feet? It's understanding, I think, more than ever, what your client's business issues and problems are, and not resting on any assumptions that, oh, I've worked in this industry for 30 years, I know what. No. You know, regardless of the industry, it's never been at this point in its history. So we need to make sure we're getting smarter, and we're helping our clients get smarter, and how they can communicate. Advertising as a discipline is really expanding and growing. And it's one that, you know, my background is much more heavily in public relations, but as PR professionals, we need to make sure that we understand all the new and really emerging advertising opportunities, because those are going to prove to be so powerful.
I agree, and I think the other concern that I have in all of this is looking at the more traditional media channels, and the impact of COVID on them is causing us to really pay attention to what's available to be able to communicate our clients' messages.
You know what I also am appreciating in the traditional news outlets and media sources is that they are providing, it seems more than ever, deeper content in subject matter that's a little farther afield than they would. I read a great piece that really focused on behaviorism and behavioral psychology. And so trying to forecast what's happening, some of the health mandates that are so important to flattening the curve and to managing the pandemic, you know, we anticipated that there would be some extreme perspectives or actions or positions at both ends of that topic. But the activism of it surprised me. The shouting and the staunch defending. And this article went on to really explain that in a behaviorism, understanding that what we're experiencing is our fight or flight is being triggered. And when that is triggered by something unknown or unknowable, like a pandemic or a virus that can be asymptomatic and we're not certain how it presents, or we're really not certain how it is being communicated at all times, that we will find some position that we feel strongly about and we will defend that position. And that really helped me put it in perspective, some of what we're seeing or experiencing even in our own lives.
Well, so that brings up a thought. So at the same time that we're dealing with this COVID, we had another national crisis in terms of the tragic death of George Floyd and what that's happening. So as our organizations are trying to figure out how to deal with COVID, there along came this other emerging issue of looking at racially inequality, et cetera, at the same time, and having to deal with that. Do you find that you're helping your clients understand that issue as well?
Absolutely, we've been very active in that, and while there are things that are harder to understand, why didn't we make this progress, or why didn't these actions happen sooner? On the other hand, broadcast journalism does a great job, and we were all huddled together but apart, seeking more information, trying to understand and be a part of the world, but having to do it through reporting. And we were an eyewitness to a senseless and brutal murder. And of course we stood up and acted up and called for change. And I think we can anticipate more of that. It's interesting, some of what we are seeing is recommended for people to do now. To speak of Del Galloway again and the program he's doing, something that I know Del is telling the communicators at Wells Fargo that he leads is that this is a time when the communication profession is called to be bold. That we need to be bold. That there are real challenges out there, and we need to stand up to them, and we need to help, whether it's our neighbors or our employees or our industry, be bold as well and do the right thing. Another truth that we saw, especially early on with doing research, especially when we were looking at how to restart an economy, or one project we worked on with the Lieutenant Governor's Office of Louisiana was how to restart the tourism industry for Louisiana. And that's if not the main engine for the economy of the great state of Louisiana. And something that we really advocated was be of service, not of sales. Let's help each other. Let's share information. Let's see what we can do. It's not all about making the next booking or making the next sale. It's really about being a genuine human being and recognizing on the other end of the Zoom call, or on the other end of the phone call, or on the other end of the email or text is another genuine human being that is probably facing challenges even greater to what we may be facing at the time.
Beautifully stated. So I am optimistic that we are going to emerge from this. There's definitely going to be a change in society, but we're going to get through this COVID-19. John, what do you think the role of public relations is going to be when we emerge from this?
Well, first, our role is so important. We're midwives, so we've got to help us emerge from this. And we've got to look at what's happening and help make good decisions on priorities and making a difference. When we look back at past crises, there is always, good always comes from it. Whether you're looking at the tragedy of September 11th, or Hurricane Katrina for Southeast Louisiana, while there was tremendous loss and unimaginable suffering that came with those crises. As we look back with gratitude that we're able to look back, great things came from it. There were advances. There was real movement. And this, it struck me early on that for the first time ever in human history, every household, everywhere on the planet, had the same one thing that they were worried about and thinking about. And while this virus itself is keeping us apart, we really have been brought together like never before. And our profession is all about the uncontrolled. It's all about the people that control everything from the message to the reality. So that role of midwife is really important to get, that we've all got to get through it. And that's going to take us leading with the wisdom to know we've got to have good information and good data, and the compassion to know that it's the people that matter. It's not the economic, measures or the economy or the job even. And so I think public relations, and that we're ideally suited to that. When we get out of this, I'm not so certain about what our role will be. I'll tell you, Marty, I tried early on. I was going to see how quickly I could anticipate some outcome or some change, and not a bit successful. I've been dancing at the last minute like everyone else.
Right. Except that one thing that I think, again, looking back on my time as a PR professional, I think the role and the importance of communication, of providing truth, facts, followed by good actions, I think people are appreciating that more than ever. And I think that we will continue to have that seat at the table and be called on for that good advice, that research-based advice that you're giving your clients. I think that's going to be that is the future.
And it's a future that we have to create. Sadly, we are all facing this at a time when culturally we've, for I'm sure many different reasons leading up to it, but culturally we're less inclined to listen to each other, especially when we think we might be in disagreement or that we might not be aligned. And that's incompatible with the best future that we can have for everyone. Somehow, and it seems, while it's a daunting challenge, it seems like we're the right people for it. But we've got to somehow, at a cultural DNA level, relearn how to listen and how to have real dialogue. Not, I'm coming in, this is what I want to get across, and I'm going to say it over and over and louder. But instead, I'm humbly coming into this, and I'm hopeful that I'm going to leave here surprised at how little I knew before I had a discussion with someone that has a different perspective than I do.
John, amen. I got to tell you, when I was knee-high to a nipper, I remember my father, may he rest in peace, said to me, Marty, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. You should listen twice as much as you talk.
Yeah.
And that was true then, and it's true now. John Deveny, thank you so much for being on PR Benefits. John Deveny, president of the full-service marketing and public relations company Deveny, with offices in New Orleans, Louisiana, and West Palm Beach, Florida. Thanks for being on the show, John.
Thank you.
Thanks also to Rich Mellinson at BCTV for helping to edit this show. Rachel Cohn, my daughter, who is an art professor at Ball State University, for her technical assistance on the podcast, and also for Twin Musicom for the music that you hear at the beginning and end of the show. It's called Hat the Jazz, and I think it really sets the tone for the show. I am Marty Cohn in Vermont. Stay healthy.